Warning: the following video contains massive spoilers for Fire Emblem Engage. Proceed at your own risk. So recently I finished Fire Emblem Engage, and I have some thoughts. I'm sure I don't need anyone to tell them that this game's story takes a far less serious approach than Three Houses when it comes to the narrative. Rather than exploring the ideals of various different factions in a war and seeing the conflict play out from different perspectives, we're back to a more traditional good versus evil situation. Chosen One goes on a quest to slay the big bad and save the world. And don't get me wrong, that's fine. Not every game needs to have branching paths or dive so deep into politics that people make hours-long essays about why they support or stand against the philosophies of a main character. Engage is, above all else, a belated anniversary game trying to celebrate the history of Fire Emblem as a franchise. So I think it makes sense to go back to the series' roots and just keep things simple this time around. That being said, the actual execution of that story was, in my opinion, okay. Not awful, not disappointing, just okay. There were some genuinely great moments that caught me off guard, and some that were so steeped in anime cliches that even I, as an anime fan, couldn't help rolling my eyes at a little. Some characters I got really attached to, some I was indifferent towards at best. The character design and art direction tended to be a little hit or miss, though in all fairness that's hardly anything new. However, what I want to discuss more than anything is the game's overall theme, its ending, and how it might have been executed better. One of the aforementioned anime cliches that the game utilizes is, of course, the power of friendship. A trope that is often looked down upon for how cheesy and over the top it is, though I feel like it gets a bad rap mainly due to the fact that it's often executed poorly. The power of friendship often manifests as a literal power that ultimately serves as little more than a deus ex machina to overcome the antagonist, who usually spends the moments leading up to their defeat going on some self-indulgent monologue about how friendship is worthless, bonds make you weak, I'm strong because I don't need anyone, etc. I'm sure we're all painfully aware of the trope by now. And I regret to say that is exactly how the final ultimate battle plays out. Thing is, the power of friendship can be done well when executed competently. Though the argument often gets lost beneath all the campy dialogue and over-the-top flashy finishers, there is a real ideological discussion to be found under all the fluff. The antagonists, of course, are typically arguing that it's ultimately better to be entirely self-sufficient rather than ever relying or depending on others for help, especially when people can so often be motivated by their own self-interests and betray your trust when you least expect it. The counter-argument to that is that no one is all-powerful and there are people out there worth putting your faith in. It's okay to lean on others when you need to. To veer away from Fire Emblem for a moment, let's talk about a scene from Persona 5. Spoilers for that game, by the way. One of the best examples of this trope I've seen has to be the battle against Akechi, who goes off on that same nihilistic tangent that so many other villains do. Thing is, Akechi makes it work so much better because he never initially chose to be alone. The poor kid had to make it on his own in a world surrounded by awful, selfish people who only reinforce that idea of looking out for number one. Beyond that, though, Akechi is ridiculously powerful. His unique abilities as a Persona user make him quite possibly the single strongest person in the room. If any of the Phantom Thieves tried to take him on alone, Akechi would have crushed them. Maybe you can argue that Joker could have held his own, though given that the two are so often portrayed as being on the same level, I feel like that fight could honestly go either way. Luckily, the Phantom Thieves don't have to fight alone. Though Akechi calls it cliché BS, he did lose to the power of teamwork. Every one of the Phantom Thieves has a role to play on the team, and they all make up for one another's weaknesses. They overcame Akechi's raw strength through numbers and coordination, as well as trusting one another to look out for each other. In the end, Akechi's refusal to accept the Phantom Thief's ideology and choice to remain alone leads to the inevitable outcome of that choice, meeting a tragic fate without anyone there to save him or lend him a hand when he needs it. Moving back to Fire Emblem, the final battle against Sombron ultimately comes down to Alear using his power as the game's literal living plot MacGuffin to re-summon the emblems after they've been dispelled. Look, I get it. It's an anniversary game, so having all the previous protagonists come in to lend their strength makes sense. Also, of course, we're not actually going to take away the main mechanic that the game is literally named after for the final battle. Still, I feel like this was a massive missed opportunity. See, it's confirmed in the final battle that emblems are a bit like heroic spirits from Fate. They're not actually the real heroes brought back to life, but rather the living embodiments of those heroes' legends. Heroes from the pages of storybooks made manifest, if you will. And just like those heroic spirits, aspects of the stories can be altered or changed to create alternate, even potentially evil versions of them. They can be companions if you treat them right, but emblems are first and foremost weapons or familiars based off of iconic figures from across the franchise. What disappoints me is that relying on the emblems all the way to the end feels like a denial of Alear's character progression. See, Alear is not like some of our previous protagonists. Sure, he's a chosen one being the divine dragon and all, but he's not really super adept at combat and rather lacks in self-confidence. His initial reaction to adversity at the start of the game is to flee, and we see time and again how easily he falters when the emblems are taken from him, something that happens no less than 3 times over the course of the game. This isn't exclusive to Alear, by the way. Every protagonist in this game falls into despair without their emblems. See, while Sombron's philosophy is obviously flawed, and even rather hypocritical given his ultimate motivation, there is some merit to it. It's okay to seek help when you need it and put your trust in others if you think they're deserving of it, but you also shouldn't become over-reliant on them or lean on others as a crutch. There are times when you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Losing the emblems again at the end could have been the perfect opportunity for Alear and the others to embrace that lesson. I mean, really think about it. The entire game, our main characters have been relying on the power of heroes from other worlds to save their own. But those heroes didn't have the same luxury in their own games. Marth, Ike, Corrin, Byleth, none of them had the power to call on each other for help during their own game's conflicts. Sure, they may have all had special MacGuffins or powers of their own, but at the end of the day, they had to rely on their own resolve and allies, not special power-ups that come from merging with other heroes. The final battle with Sombron would have been a fantastic moment for the people of Lethos to demonstrate a mix of both philosophies. They may not have had emblem rings to fall back on, save for Alear, technically, but that's no excuse to give up and just let the villain win. This would have been the perfect time for Alear to come into his own as the world's divine dragon, and his allies' opportunity to show the strengths of their nations without their national treasures. Of course, I do understand from a gameplay perspective why this would have been slightly problematic. Again, it might come off as a little hypocritical telling players to stop relying on one of the game's core mechanics that they've probably been conditioned to make use of throughout their entire playthrough. Maybe as a compromise, we can alter the story a bit to say that the emblems used up all their power to revive Alear earlier and make him the 13th emblem, thus rendering the rings inert. We can then say that during the final battle, the emblems are able to awaken and engage again after witnessing the strength and conviction of the heroes who dared to challenge the Fell Dragon without their power. Sort of a you proved yourselves worthy sort of deal. Yeah, it might seem a bit more cliche and might undercut the point a bit, but at the very least it would feel more impactful than losing the rings only to get them back literally a moment later. And yes, I do know that the emblems all vanish after the final battle anyway, due to the whole closing the rift thing, so the people of Lethos do still need to learn not to rely on them. But then we get teased with the possibility that they can come back anyways, so again, kinda undermines the point. To sum up my thoughts on the matter, again, I didn't hate Engage's story, and I wasn't even really expecting it to be mind-blowing in the first place, but I was ultimately kind of disappointed with the finale. It ultimately felt like the game just wanted to blast us with nostalgia at the end by having a bunch of past heroes and villains clashing all at once, rather than actually do something interesting with the themes and concepts that are already there. But what do you all think? Did you enjoy Engage's finale, or do you wish they'd taken a somewhat different direction for it? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll see you all next time.